I spent 15 years building a life out of school pickups, night shifts, and boxed macaroni. And on her wedding morning, my daughter told me a stranger would take my arms place, as if love could be swapped like a rental tux. You're watching Revenge Files. Subscribe for a new twist daily. By the time an unmarked package slid against my door that night, her childhood diary flagged to page 47. The timer on my pride had already started, counting down to a secret that would break me and a paper trail that might save her. My name is Daniel Mercer, 47. I wire high-rise offices for a living in Denver, Colorado, and I've been good with circuits since I was a kid soldering radios in Pueblo. My daughter is Emma. We live 15 minutes apart, but there were years when it felt like the length of I-25 ran between us. Her mother, Lila, left when Emma was 2. She said she needed air, then a job in Phoenix, then a new last name when she married a man named Bryce Cantor. I kept diapers in the truck, learned to braid with YouTube and patience, and taped a note on the fridge that said, "Rent due first, lunch left shelf. Love of. Love of. Love Loves. Love. When Emma was 8, my dad died and left a letter and $10,000. For Emma's school, he wrote, "I opened an education account at a brokerage in town, a 529 named Silver Birch, because that's what the rep called their model portfolio with the squirrel on the folder. I tossed every overtime dollar I could into it. By the time Emma was a junior, it was $64,780. College turned into community college, then a job at a bakery she loved. I didn't mind. The account was still hers. It could wait for nursing school or a house down payment someday. The point was simple, something with her name on it no one could take. Except, Emma got engaged to a guy named Mark last fall. Good kid. Teaches shop at a charter school in Thornton. The wedding was set for June 15th at the Riverview Lofts in Boulder. Brick walls and string lights, all the things Pinterest invented. I rented a charcoal suit and bought a tie that matched her bouquet. On the morning of, at the rehearsal, she squeezed my hand and pulled it away like it was hot. "Bryce is walking me," she said. "My real dad." The word hit harder than the sentence. I swallowed and nodded because you can't argue an aisle into loving you. I shook Mark's hand. I left early under the story that I needed to feed the dog. I drove home to my one story on Wolf Street with the porch light I'd wired myself, and I sat in the truck until the cab cooled enough to let me breathe. The package was on my doormat. No return address. Inside, wrapped in brown paper like a library book, was a little floral diary with a tiny brass lock long broken. There was also a note in Emma's looping hand. "Dad, read page 47 before you judge me. E." I made coffee I didn't drink. I opened the diary to page 47 and found a girl's handwriting telling the truth in the way only 12-year-olds do. Mom says Dad doesn't want me on weekends because he works. But I saw the texts. He asked and she said no. Mom says he used my college money to pay his truck, but I saw the file with a squirrel at Dad's. The next line made my eyes sting. "If he really has a silver birch for me, I'll go get it when I'm 18. I turned the pages like they were explosives. Doodles of shoes turned into lists of tests, then a teenage inventory of hurts I hadn't known how to stop. On the last page, in ink darker than the rest, dated April 7th of this year, there was one more confession. I did a DNA kit for fun. Bryce is my biological father. I found out in February. Mom knew. I don't know how to tell you, and I hate what this makes everything. That sentence turned my ribs to glass. I had picked Emma up from preschool, packed her lunch for field day, taught her to drive in the church lot. Biology didn't change the smell of crayons in our kitchen or the way she fell asleep on my shoulder at Monsters Incorporated. It changed something else, the story about the aisle. The word real weaponized into a sword that cut both ways. I slept 2 hours on the couch with the diary under my palm like a charge I was diffusing. When I woke up, I did the thing that saved me more than prayer. I made a list. Call brokerage, Silver Birch account stat, Tal brokerage. Silver Birch account stat, Vexland stat there. Call brokerage, Silver Birch account stat. Check credit on Emma, freezes, alerts. Find any paperwork on beneficiary change. Put feelings later. Monday at 8:01 a.m., I called the brokerage where I opened the 529. The rep pulled up the account by my social security number and then by Emma's. I'm not seeing an active 529 for Emma Mercer, he said. There was one, but it was closed a year ago. The owner of record was changed before closure. Owner of record? I asked. It was in my name, with Emma as beneficiary. Correct, he said. In September, a custodial change form was processed to move ownership to the beneficiary's parent, listed in our records. The account was then liquidated in 3 distributions in October and November. How much? My voice felt like sandpaper. Total distributions were $61,800, he said. 2 checks to Cantor Interiors, LLC, and 1 to Vivian L. Cantor, he read. Notes say education expenses. Bryce's company. Lila's new last name. That's not a qualified use, I said, calmer than I felt. What do I need to see copies? He emailed me a request form. There may be a fee, he said. Also, any potential fraud or misuse can be reported to the State Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division, and you may want to consult counsel. I wrote numbers. I printed the custodial change form they'd scanned. The signature on the owner's line looked like mine until it didn't. Someone had lifted my scrawl from old documents and practiced. The notary was a name I didn't recognize from a place in Broomfield. I called the notary, who didn't answer. I left a message. This is Daniel Mercer. Please call me about a custodial change you stamped last September. One problem, even if the 529 was misused, tax penalties would fall on the owner on record when it was cashed. Not me anymore. But the money belonged to Emma. And I could do math on paper just fine, and law in motion with help. I paid $250 for a 2-hour consult with a trusts and estates attorney named Jasmine Cole. She sat in a sunlit office off Colfax with diplomas that looked real and a paralegal who moved fast without sighing. I slid the diary across like I was passing her a living thing. I showed her the custodial change form and the distributions. This is a tidy mess, Jasmine said, kind and direct. A529 is technically owned by the account holder, but a change of owner executed by forgery is fraud. And if they used the funds for a business, that's misuse. Here's what I propose. We file a civil action in Denver District Court on Emma's behalf for conversion and unjust enrichment, and we seek a temporary restraining order freezing the Cantor's business account to the amount withdrawn. We also file a complaint with the Colorado Attorney General's office. And this matters. We talk to Emma. She's an adult. She's the injured party. How much to start? I asked. $3, $500 retainer, she said. Filing fee is $235. If we file for a TRO, we need a $100 sheriff's fee to serve. I signed. I'd saved $11,000 over the years because electricians get steady work, and I don't drink. I wired the retainer from my credit union and walked out with tasks. I texted Emma, I received your diary. I love you. I need to talk about the Silver Birch account. Coffee at Huckleberry on 39th? Anytime Tuesday. No pressure. She replied 4 minutes later. 10 a.m.? She came in wearing a pale blue dress and the smallest shake in her hands. She looked like she did on her first day of kindergarten when her backpack was bigger than her torso. I'm sorry about the aisle, she said. I said it the worst way. I heard you, I said. I brought coffee, and this is about something else. I showed her the distributions. I explained what a 529 could be used for and what it couldn't. I explained the owner change. She stared. They told me the college account wasn't real, she said. Then when I asked again, Mom said you took it during COVID for rent. They took it, I said, and wrote education in the memo like a joke. I didn't say the other sentence sitting in my throat. Bryce is your biological father. She knew I'd found out. She'd put the diary in my hands to make sure I would. What do I do? She asked finally, small as a voice on a baby monitor. You hired Jasmine. I already did. It'll be filed in your name. You don't have to pick between fathers to ask for your money back. I put the engagement of a different kind on the table, a retainer agreement with her name as plaintiff. She signed. Her hand stopped shaking. Jasmine filed on June 21st, Emma Mercer versus Cantor Interiors, LLC, and Vivian Cantor, with allegations of conversion, civil theft, and unjust enrichment for $61,800 plus costs, treble damages reserved, and a request for a temporary restraining order, freezing the business account at Western Federal up to $62,000. We attached exhibits, the custodial change form with the suspect's signature, the distribution ledger, my declaration about the account's origin, and a letter from the brokerage confirming the non-qualified nature of the withdrawals. The judge set a hearing for June 28th and granted a temporary freeze ex parte for 72 hours pending service. The order read like electricity. It authorized the sheriff to serve Western Federal with an account restraint. It set a clock. Served by 5 p.m. tomorrow, or the freeze dissolves. We moved. The paralegal walked the order to the sheriff's civil desk, paid $100, and texted me a photo of the clerk's stamped copy. I drove it to the bank branch on Spear. The manager read the order like a person reading the weather report that said hail at 5. We'll place a hold on all Cantor Interiors accounts up to the stated amount, she said. They'll be notified. Except Bryce called before I got home. You think you're clever? He said. You're not Emma's father. You're a jealous electrician with a savior complex. You're right about one thing, I said. I'm an electrician, and I'm good at following lines to see where the power's stolen. He sent a cease and desist email the next morning from an attorney whose website featured a yacht promises. The letter called our action frivolous and threatened to seek fees. Jasmine wrote a 2-paragraph reply attaching the judge's temporary order and an invitation to discuss settlement upon return of funds with interest. We didn't hear back. The hearing on June 28th, Saturday, me on a bench in Division 409 with a knot tied between my shoulder blades. Emma wore slacks and a white blouse and held my hand like she did when crossing 38th Avenue as a kid. Lila arrived in a white blazer, Bryce in a blue suit that tried too hard. Jasmine argued with the clean energy of a person who believes facts should win. All we ask today is preservation, she said. Keep the money where it is until we litigate the merits. The funds were taken from a 529 established by Mr. Mercer for Emma solely. The owner change signature is suspect. The use is outside the allowable scope. We have bank records tying the withdrawals to the defendant's business. Bryce's lawyer talked about family disputes and gifts, then tried to say that because Bryce was Emma's biological father, he was a more natural owner of the funds. The judge raised an eyebrow. Biology doesn't convert an account, he said. And on this record, the court finds a likelihood of success on the merits and potential irreparable harm if funds are dissipated. Temporary restraining order continued as a preliminary injunction. Defendants are ordered to place $61,800 in the court registry within 10 days or to provide proof of a bond securing that amount. Failure to do so will result in further sanctions. Lila's face drained. Bryce's jaw did something expensive. We walked into the July sun, and Emma exhaled like a balloon, losing the scream it had held for years. I didn't know you could do that, she said. You can do a lot when you write it down and file it where it counts, I said. But then the mid-roll hit like a surprise breaker popping at a job site. On July 3rd, Emma got an email from a store card she didn't open, congratulating her on her new account with a $12,000 limit. The shipping address was Bryce's showroom. The application had her social security number. He'd opened a line to float leftover wedding expenses in her name. We went to the Denver Police Department's online portal and filed an identity theft report. The case number printed at the end like a ticket stub you keep until the show proves good. DPDIT 54109. We placed freezes with the 3 credit bureaus and attached the report. Jasmine amended our complaint to add a claim under the state's identity theft civil remedy. She also sent Bryce's lawyer a spoliation letter telling them to preserve all emails and texts related to accounts in Emma's name. Bryce texted Emma from a different number, "You owe us. Biology matters." She forwarded it. Jasmine printed it on white paper that made black marks look like what they were, threats. On July 12th, the 10-day deadline for the court registry passed. No deposit, no bond. Jasmine filed a motion for contempt with a request for writs of garnishment. The judge set a show cause hearing for July 19th and authorized writs to any accounts in the name of Cantor Interiors at Western Federal and Mile High Credit Union. I spent the week working on a high-rise on 17th Street, pulling cable through conduit and counting how many times in 15 years I'd fixed things that someone else broke. At night, I read the diary again. Page 47 told one truth. The last page told another. Both were facts. Both hurt. But facts are not enemies. They are rails. At the show cause hearing, Bryce's lawyer stammered about unexpected liquidity issues. The judge was unimpressed. Sheriff authorized to levy accounts, he said, then turned and hit them with an order that felt like a breaker flipping on. Defendants to produce complete records of the use of 529 funds within 14 days. Failure will result in sanctions and an adverse inference. The levy brought back $38,400 from Western Federal. Mile High yielded $9,800. Not everything, but enough to stop them from moving cash into other pockets. The court registry held the sum like a lockbox. Settlement followed not because hearts changed, but because numbers blocked exits. On August 3rd, we mediated in a conference room with glass walls and the view of the highway. Bryce spent the first hour whispering into his phone. Lila cried without ruining her mascara. Emma sat straight. I wrote down numbers, so I wouldn't say words I couldn't take back. The mediator returned with a proposal. Return the entire $61,800 to Emma within 30 days from the registry and by cashier's check for the balance not yet deposited, she said. Pay $8,000 toward plaintiff's fees and costs. Close all lines of credit opened in Emma's name. Provide written letters to credit bureaus stating accounts were opened without authorization. Remove any claim to the 529 funds and agree not to open accounts in Emma's name without written consent. Jasmine added one line. And a written statement from the notary who stamped the owner change explaining who presented the document and what ID was used, she said. Bryce flared. Lila pinched his wrist. They asked for an hour. We ate sandwiches at the table because power is even blood sugar in a fight that drags. When they came back, they signed. We took the state paperwork to the clerk. The judge entered the settlement as an order on August 7th, with a line that made me smile in a way I hadn't in months. The court retains jurisdiction to enforce. Bryce's lawyer handed Jasmine a cashier's check for $13,400 on the spot to cover the difference between what had been levied and what was owed, plus part of fees. The registry released the $48,400. 10 days later, a second cashier's check arrived for the remaining fees. Jasmine gave Emma a closing letter with a neat list of balances and an attached IRS guidance sheet about how to recontribute funds to a new 529 in her sole name. Emma opened a new 529 at a different brokerage with Jasmine's help. She named herself owner and beneficiary. She set up two $50 per month auto contributions from her bakery paycheck and mine. Small, steady, ours. The notary's letter arrived a week later. He wrote that Lila had shown up with the form and an ID for Daniel Mercer that he later realized was a laminated photocopy without proper holograms. He apologized and said he had reported the incident to the Secretary of State's Notary Division. Jasmine forwarded the letter to the Attorney General's Consumer Protection Unit with our complaint number. I didn't care if charges came. I cared that a file with our names in it sat on a shelf where a future investigator could find it. The wedding photos posted on social finally. Emma looked like a person trying to hold two truths at once and not drop either. Bryce looked like a man who had never been told what no feels like. Lila looked like she had pulled the drapes shut and forgotten the window behind them was glass. 2 weeks after settlement, Emma came by with a small box. She stood on my porch under the porch light I had wired and said, "I want you to have this." Inside was the tie clip I gave her when she was 10 for the father-daughter dance at the rec center, engraved D.E. "I don't need it back," I said. "I do," she said. "I needed to give you something that didn't come with a lawsuit attached." We ate spaghetti and watched the Rockies lose. At the sink, she asked the question that had sat like a loose wire. "Are you okay with, with Bryce being your biological father?" I said, "No. I'm not okay. I'm also not undone. Biology told you one fact. The last 15 years told you 1,000. You don't have to choose which one makes me your dad. You can let both sit without fighting." She wiped her eyes. "I think I picked real because I was angry and scared," she said. "I wanted a simple label so I didn't have to read anything complicated." I laughed, and it sounded like something healing. "Complicated is where the good stuff lives," I said. "Like wiring. The lines you don't see keep the lights on." There were ripples. Bryce posted about forgiving people who sue you. The bakery offered Emma a lead decorator position with a $2 raise because she'd shown up every day, even when life felt like court papers. Lila sent an email with the subject, "Can we talk?" that sat unread for a week before I replied, "Not now. Not never. Just not now." In September, Emma texted, "Can you come to school orientation? I'm starting nights at Red Rocks Community College for nursing prereqs." I sat in the lecture hall I hadn't seen since high school chaperone nights and watched her write fast on the top of a page. Facts, action, support, time. Her mnemonic. We were at my kitchen table that evening, color-coding her schedule with pens from a jar, when she pulled the diary out of her tote. She had wrapped it in brown paper again, like a small package you return to a person you trust. "I don't want to keep this around anymore," she said. "I want the next pages to be boring." I slid it into a shoebox with old yearbooks and a baseball from the game we left in the 7th because of lightning. I wrote E's diary, "Return if she asks," on the lid with a Sharpie. I put it on the closet shelf next to the smoke detector batteries and the winter gloves. The court sent a notice in October. Case closed. Settlement satisfied. Injunction dissolved by stipulation. Jasmine emailed a final invoice with a zero balance and a note that said, "Tell Emma to call me if she needs anything else. Tell you to rest. I'm good with plans, better with repairs, best with the work that takes small courage every day." I didn't walk my daughter down the aisle. I walked her into a courthouse, then out again with papers that gave her back what was hers and a path that didn't require choosing a word like real as a weapon. Sometimes, at night, I stand on the porch with the dog and watch the streetlights throw cones of gold on Wolf Street. I think about the unmarked package in page 47 and about the last line that broke me and then let me set down a load I'd carried alone. Aisles are for ceremony. Hallways, I've learned, are for walking beside someone you love, not in front, not behind, just there, quietly, all the way to the next door.